Okay, hi everybody. The brave few that get into this ancient, forever yet pioneering area, as an emanation begins to retract itself, having made the turn, as apparently we human beings have made an important turn. We become interested in the unveiling process. And that takes a long time. I think I once told you that I tried to figure out from the old commentary how long a universe might last. I mean, and I'm not just talking about the 15 billion years that science proposes. I'm talking about something that's found in the old commentary, and I think I had something with like 90 zeros after it. An internal universe. Now remember that the duration of our solar system, according to the Brahmanical chronology, is 311 trillion and 40 billion years. So basically there's 311 and 12 places after that. And that's just a drop in the bucket. But the amazing thing is, and I hope we'll begin to see that as we go along, is that because it is a definite time, in other words, a definite span, and has a beginning and end, just like everything else, it resolves down when compared with eternal duration or absolute infinitude of time. It resolves down to an infinitesimal. And not only an infinitesimal, but the what I call the absolute infinitesimal, something that is always smaller than any span of time you can imagine. So it may be trillions and gazillions of years, I love big numbers, but it collapses into the tiniest thing you can imagine. So time and space and the duration are very quizzical. They are factors which are, to our way of thinking, rather paradoxical. And the way we can get a little handle on that is by refusing to divide anything we perceive. In other words, our perceptual apparatus is so limited, and even the perceptual, self-perceptual apparatus of a universal logos is so limited that you just get parts of the whole. And the wholeness is absolutely infinite. I haven't quite worked it out yet, and I don't know if I ever will in this incarnation. I'm going to try, but it's very difficult to get a handle on these huge magnitudes and the tiniest things, and then to discover that our real identity, and I make a joke here in a way, is pointless. I say that absoluteness is pointless. And of course, it's a double meaning, It means it has no purpose, but that's not really what it means. It means that no particularity, no part, no specificity exists within it. It's an utter beingness, the most utter of anything, and it's not a thing, you know. So there's no points in it, and we have to wait for points to appear when the active deity appears, which is not the absolute. And that's one of my presumptions, that there is an absolute deity. Yeah, I call it that too. And it can look at itself in one way, and it sees homogeneous absoluteness. And it looks at itself in another way, and it sees an absolutely infinite articulation of realized possibilities. And all that's occurring even before a universe exists and after a universe exists. So, you know, we're into some pretty heavy metaphysics here, but it all comes down to utter simplicity. We've got to just be able to say, "Thou art that," as it is said in the ancient Vedanta and Upanishads, "Thou art that," and that's the root of it all. And if we can just begin to identify thatness as a homogeneous thing by learning not just to perceive, but to infusive, you know, a coined word, infusive, then we'll begin to understand that formless something which has its root in the heart. And as one of our members said, and it's not just the heart center. You know, there are many heart centers. There's one between the shoulder blades, one at the top of the head. The egoic lotus is a heart, and the monad is 12-fold, and a heart, and on it goes, you know. But this other heart is something where life itself is found in its complete formlessness. And so what we have to develop here, you know, I'm not excusing myself or anyone from learning the details that are found in Cosmic Fire and in the Tibetan's books. He is the master of meticulous entirety. It's a second-rate thing. And he just knows the intricacies like, well, he would be modest and say there are others that know it more, and of course there are, but he knows amazingly the intricacies of our local universe, at least. And we have to learn all that at the same time as realizing that it's all a universal Mahamaya, which means the great illusion. It's all a universal Mahamaya, and something far more real than all these parts and pieces is going on. So both things at the same time, two at the same time, and then I think for purposes of any incarnation like this one or a few coming incarnations, we will be covered in terms of what we're supposed to be studying. Now, I'd like to just have a little kind of reflection before we begin. And, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I just want to welcome you, Anna, and Annette, and Antoinette, and Brennan, and Catherine, and Damien, Dennis. Is this a Dennis? Or Denise? Dennis. Okay, Dennis, good. I was afraid that I was seeing my old friend that I've known since we were 7 years old, who's a complete third-rate, fifth-rate atheist materialist. And I thought, uh-oh, he's coming to this. Anyway, Dennis, welcome. And Aha, and Jeff, and Gloria, Helen, Hideko, Joan, Karen, Kathy, Leah, Leslie, Loretta, beautiful poetry there, Martha, Michael, Stacia, Stephen, Tia, and Ivenica. And then over here on the other side, just to make sure that we maybe get a recording out of this and other things, Joe and Tuya are there. So welcome indeed to everybody. I'm very glad you're here, taking the risk of thinking outside the box, you know. So let's just have, I think I'll go to this thing they call Parabrahm. Of course, it's not Parabrahm, but it's some approximation of Parabrahm. Parabrahm is life. It is the life-being aspect within the universe. It's the beingness of the universal logos. But the final Parabrahm is existing continuously even when universes are not. So what do I call it, you know? Ultra Parabrahm? I don't know what to call it, but thou art that, okay? So let's just settle in and think about how we usually identify ourselves. If someone asks you, you know, who you are, what are you going to tell them? You know, I suppose it's fairly conventional, you know, what you might say at first. Someone questions your identity, and what do you say? And I suppose, you know, some people will start with the idea that they're a human being and they live at a certain time in such and such a nation, and they are interested in this and that, and they earn their living by doing this and that, and they're related to this person and that person. This is how we usually describe ourselves. And that's right as far as it goes in the world of Maya, or in the Mahamaya. But what if those rings pass not which confine our self-perception to boundedness? What if they were to keep lifting? And all those boundaries, those horizons, those definite perimeters of our sphere, what if they were to just start melting away? What if the very things that keep us from merging with each other and make us seem like separate beings were to start melting, dissolving? You know, what I want to be able to do with us here, if I can, is allow us to live in both Neptune and Uranus. Neptune will give the power to dissolve boundaries, and Uranus, with its essential Ray 1 nature, will give the occult mind and all the articulation we need to discover the details. So that's, our quest. We have the curriculum of relativity and the curriculum of being. And so we would appear then, we'd be merging, just the way this chart kind of shows. We'd be merging with other beings, and we'd say, oh, well, we can't do that because that's a different being. But it's only a different emanation of the same thing. And we're all the same thing. Matter of fact, I've begun now to write, as you know. I'm sending it to you, some thoughts on the word same, sameness, samify, coined word, samification, making same. It's a wonderful word, as long as it's contrasted with utter articulation, infinite articulation. And the heart, okay. So just in your imagination, how we often do this, just imagine someone in your life, someone probably that you at least like or love. We'll take care of the bad guys later, but they're no different also. And just get a visualization of that person. That person, or maybe another person related, pretty soon we're going to include everyone. Naught is but me. And then focus in your heart center. Malcolm provided us with this beautiful thing about the heart from the Upanishads, and we have that Ramana Maharshi. He was, for our purposes, a great thinker. He just said, keep on asking yourself, who am I? That is the vicharya. And of course, he said it's the fastest way. So now you're in your heart and you're looking at an image of that person. And you're watchful. You're waiting for something else to happen. It can happen just real suddenly. It means that you'll see the form all right, but something far more real will consume your image. And if you allow that to be sustained, you can devour the form of any image, and it will become this other formless something. So you're starting out on the road to infuception, and it allows for eventually the kind of identification which the Christ had mastered. The Tibetan tells us in John 17, I think it is, I and them, and they and me, and we in him, and all that. It's something that pervades, and it happens suddenly. So sometimes you have to wait for it, But don't get caught up in form. Form makes no difference for this purpose. This is beyond form. And is also beyond good and evil. Keep your heart open and allow this something which is an all-pervasive something or no thing to start including everything you see in your imagination. Doesn't make any difference what, but, to begin with, we just look at another person or two. And form becomes secondary to this something, which now has literally made its presence felt. And this presence knows no boundaries, really, because essentially it is reality. And we're not there yet, but this pervading something, the great mystery is. That's step number 2, and we don't necessarily have to go there yet. It's enough to just get the presence of the isness of anything. Isness is identical. It doesn't make any difference about the form. And the amazing thing about this, maybe step 2 or 3, that isness, that pervasion, that presence, that infuception is you. Now just think about that for a moment. That's not the formal you, that's the real you. Or maybe we can just call it the great I, I-ness. And no matter who you see or what you see in your imagination or open your eyes and whatever, we all share that I-ness, which is isness, which is presence. So see if you can practice for a few moments the continuity of isness, the continuity of this otherness which has been revealed. Some days it works, some days not as well, but you're looking at someone, maybe a couple of people, whatever, and there it is, this pervasive thing. And by the very fact that it is you. That's a hard one. But if it is, it's you. It's difficult not to get trapped by the form. If I'm looking at Jupiter or our sun or some great constellation, whatever, the form can trap me. But it is what pervades the form, the great I-ness. That's what we're looking for. And it needs to be practiced every day. And then when you have it in your heart, and you are pervading anything you see, it's a Neptune thing, you can identify with anything, not with the form, but with the essence of anything, be it a sound, a taste, a color, an image. And then we begin to realize the whole is seen as one, it's only one thing. And I wouldn't want all the knowledge in the universe if I didn't have this and what it will become. I had an old teacher, a really good one, 6 planets in Pisces and Leo rising, and he said, there's 10,000 things I don't know, but of the fundamentals I am sure. And that really rang in my mind or heart long ago. So let's just keep learning every little detail, and at the same time develop a living inperience, I call it that, of naught is but me. 2 things required of us. And every day, practice being what you see. Practice being what you register. You may have to close your eyes or not. Just be every registration in essence, and allow that subtle thing to happen, which convinces you that your identification has been real and successful. You know, I know it's hard to find words, and you know, my sort of third ray approach to this third ray, second ray thing, I try to find the trigger words, what works for me. Maybe something else works for you, but I share with you. And funny, it's elusive, you know. One day, word X is a trigger word. And I try it on the next day, and it's not, and something else has to work. But I know there's more than normal, limited perception. There is infuception, I call it that. And it will reveal the indispensable, the fundamental, the essence, and we're not there yet, okay? I'm sure that the Solo Logos has a much deeper imperience of reality. It's just like reality is utter. It just is as deep as it can be. There's no end to it. There's no end to its intensity. Words will fail, of course. But we need to get real about that out of which all things came, arose. And then to discover the amazing thing that you are that out of which all things arose. And then all this without losing your balance and still acting as if what your perception reveals needs tending to, and you got to do it right in your limited relativity. So it's quite a task. It's almost easier to learn what's in cosmic fire. Okay. Now, are there any thoughts which you would like to share, either in written form or questions or spoken? You see, you just can't get away from the other person being you. You just can't do it. And that sometimes might seem like an invasion of privacy, you know, till we realize, you know, Argus has 10,000 eyes. And the 10,000, of course, is not a big enough number, but the one being has all of these apertures of perception. And maybe a few of them are apertures of infuception on the higher levels of the planes, which we haven't even touched in cosmic fire. He gives us maybe the lower two planes, the cosmic physical and the super cosmic physical plane. He gives us that, maybe. And then after that, it's going on for 10 dimensions, and more than we can possibly imagine, but we're on our way. Remember what Alice Bailey said? We talked about that in the Cosmic Fire group. She said, through the Tibetan's mind, I experience vast vistas, unbelievable, which I would have experienced in no other way. Things not written down, things simply hinted at. His mind took me there, is what she's saying. So, yet again, we're beginning, and we've done it forever. Okay, are there anything anybody would like to say or ask? And here's Stephen. Should we be seeing Michael on the screen? Did I not do that? No. Apparently I'm showing my screen. Am I not?
And we also see your image too.
Oh God, I hope you can stand it, especially if I freeze. Okay, so anyway, so that one is resolved, apparently. So any thoughts, friends? Now look, I know this is different from studying the Tibetan's material in meticulous entirety, and that's we're doing that tomorrow night, and when you join us for our glamour webinars, we do that, and when you join us for Destiny of the Nations, we study word for word what he's saying, and the reappearance of the Christ, word for word. We do that, and have to, and must. Okay. But this is a little different. If the limitations of your mind and mine can stand it, because there's this snapback that occurs. Don't forget, we've dealt with a limited mind for a long time, and it has established its boundaries. It has established what it considers to be acceptable and non-acceptable. And when you stretch it, it may snap back into its original position. But gradually, the stretching process, moving towards the abstract mind, will allow it to retain its new perceptions. And so we don't want to be forever stuck in our categories, Even I'm offering you is what categories, but eventually there's transcendental mind and nirvanic mind and monadic mind and logoic mind and, and on onto other planes. You never abandon the understanding, the mind, the perception. It's never abandoned. So it's a trip, it's a journey, and we're trying to do something that's a little different here. But I feel compelled. I got going on this stuff back in 1991, reading The Crest Jewel of Discrimination by Shankaracharya. And he was like, Master Moria says, just like the Buddha, there are two hemispheres. They are the two hemispheres. And I would say that the Buddha certainly spoke in very practical terms, but with the hints at suchness. And Shankara, well, he is dealing with the wholeness of things, but he also gets into the practicalities too. Anyway, they are the two hemispheres of the brain, or east and west, the two hemispheres. And it was a big jolt for me to read that, because I recognized, boy, I've been here before, and I decided to do something about it. So, and I'm continuing now, and if you can stand it, this is going to be a real mind stretcher. And sometimes my colleague Victoria says, well, you're going to lose your mind. And it's not such a bad thing if we can get into transcendental mind, which is the buddhi, which is pure reason, which is how things really are related. And the experience of it, the imperience of it, that's the thing. Words are important, I know that. But it's more than words. It's actually being the thing that you're experiencing. That's what's important. Okay, are there any questions? Any things you would like to say or ask? This may be a little bit of terra incognita, and you may wonder, what am I doing in all these Neptunian things? But in our particular solar system, Neptune is probably, with its second ray monad, the final absorbing planet. In the next solar system, Uranus, with its ray 1 monad, will be the final absorbing planet, I do believe, a new incarnation of Uranus. So just go to Esoteric Psychology Volume 1, look in there around page 420, 421, and you'll see the monadic rays of the three synthesizing planets: Uranus ray 1, Neptune ray 2, Saturn ray 3. And this is, in many ways, a Neptunian study, because like Christ, who is Neptune and was Neptune, he knew what was in man, and there was no boundary, which would be a boundary to us, which he could not just pass through. He could pass through because he had that pervading ability. Now, we want that too, not in the degree that Christ has it, okay, but we want the ability to pervade apparent form, and we can develop that. Okay. Any thoughts? Okay, here's Jeff, and go ahead, Jeff.
Hi, Michael. My sound okay?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Just a comment. Dyna 2 is just packed full of these kind of gems. And it's written in a way that he's very encouraging, especially when we get into the formulas 1 to 6, which deals with this particular topic. And in particular, of course, as you know, Formula 3, dealing with the basic building blocks of space, time, and being. And further in the instructions to disciples, he gives some very practical insights. And in particular, there's one which he gives to, I think it's a LDO disciple.
Yes, she was an artist, yes.
Yeah. She seemed to be a little uptight and some glamours there. But anyway, the instruction related to this is that I can read this. It's only very brief.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
He says that which is of major importance. Oh, sorry, I'll go on back. You need to learn the lesson that is relatively of no importance what you do. That which is of major importance is to register consciously all the time just exactly what you are doing.
Yeah.
I would have you remember that right doing is the result of being.
Right.
If your awareness of being is of a personality nature, so will be your activity.
Right.
If your consciousness is focused in spiritual being, your spontaneous, creative, and active service will be consequently by radiation.
Yes, it's so good, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So good. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, this is what you're saying, this type of mindfulness of living in this state. And no matter what and who.
Yeah, it is this Tibetan mindfulness thing, and the Buddha came very close to this and maybe embodied it in his words. You're probably familiar with it. He called it suchness. And, the most subtle of all things. And all things were derivative from it and contained within it. And, and the mystics of old called it God. They say, well, I'd rather, I'd like this kind of thing, I'd rather see a fly in God than a castle outside God, In other words, it was a presence. It was a presence. And it was the continuity of the presence of being. Now, it's so utterly simple, that we tend to miss it. I've been one of those in my life that has gone for the trees. I want to identify every single tree and how it interacts with every other tree and of what kind it is and blah, blah, blah. But there's the forest also. And I think we have to have both simultaneously. So if we can just, whatever we're doing of a particular nature, if we can keep the continuity of beingness, we're on the right track, And a lot of, what a lot of people will say, well, look, the average student can't deal with this, but I am, we're all average students, okay? But I am thinking that somehow we can, and that it will get clearer and clearer as we go, and the oneness of things, along with the incredible multiplicity, will live side by side in our consciousness. And I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful for that. I'm hopeful for that. Anything?
Well, there can be consequences for this type of focus that are not necessarily that good,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
practice, practice,
I know.
and choosing the time.
People, we all know what Neptune can be, and people can float off and lose touch with the practical world. But any Chohan who is basically now a monad also has an extremely practical outlook in the lower 5 subplanes. And that's our goal, to be practical and elevated into being at the same time. And who knows what lies ahead, who knows. So my purpose is to somehow offer ways in to a door, the key of which is difficult to find. And that's why I call this, seed thoughts, seeds of the infinite, SOTI. But it's kind of funny. In Finnish, sota means war, and SOTI means I fought a war. And sometimes I feel like that when I'm trying to secure being. It's elusive. The thing you were talking about is most beautiful, and these 6 things that we've said before are the seed to all philosophies. And when you read the word God and being and all that, it's just talking about us, really. And basically, it's the untouchable, because there's nothing else to touch it, and all of existence can disappear, and yet forever remains not touched, untouched, immutably the same. God is. I just love this, and I use this as an inspiration to myself, and it does it for me. And there's other things, of course, as you know, those what do you call them? They are not hints, but formulas. They really go deep. They really go deep. Really.
Oh, you mean the points of revelation? Points of revelation.
Oh, well, no.
And the hints.
Points of revelation and hints, but these keep going too. The formulas keep going. And they keep going for higher and higher initiates in between and before the 4th and the 5th degree, until he does his thing on death, as the 6th.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
The 6th one, So it's
well, this one here, to taking them up, when he's referring to space, God is not somewhere else.
No.
There can't be somewhere else for God to be, time, God is not doing something else. It can't be something else to do. And I think in here is contained the working out of purpose.
Yeah, yeah.
And of course, the third main factor here is the being, and that is that the function of identification. That is, God is not someone else.
No, that's it.
It cannot.
But if the concrete mind rules you, God is always someone else, and the worst blasphemy that you can commit is to say that you are God. You know, they'll kill you for that one. So the concrete mind is what is distorting the possibility of identification. But, you know, he says, look, between the second and third initiation, you're supposed to study Sanat Kumara, you're supposed to study Shambhala, and identification. There's one more thing in there. I'm forgetting it. It's probably the most important. But the idea is you're supposed to work with identification following the second initiation or around that time. See, so, and most of DK's students, they were one way or another approaching the second initiation. Otherwise, he wouldn't have given all this stuff. So that's not so far ahead for many people. And the whole idea that you've got to get into the monad, into Shambhala, into identification, into being, even after the second initiation, preparing for the third, should be encouraging to us, I think. You know, okay. Thank you.
We have a couple of comments, one from Leslie and one from Loretta.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Thank you, appreciate it. Okay, now let's see where we are here. Okay, so Leslie, okay. And so this is kind of a statement question. Could we say that the forest is the whole? Yeah. The synthesis and the trees are the analysis. We could indeed say that. The forest provides the vision and direction. The vertical axis and the trees provide the horizontal axis of actualization and action in the world. Okay, that's a good way. See, to study the trees, you need a good fifth ray, but you need maybe for the forest, you're seeing in wholeness, wholes. And so some of the synthetic rays are important. I always find, it's a very humble and simple kind of statement, but I've done it myself. I've just been totally into the trees, and I didn't stand back, to really see what the wholeness of the forest is. But then, I began to react more to my rising sign, which is Cancer, and it says of Cancer, the whole is seen as one. Okay, so I've always had that deep in my heart, to go after wholeness. And I started to respond to that. And all of us, as we respond to our rising sign, we're coming closer to the center of our life, of our soul life. Now, here's Loretta. Okay, so here we go. Loretta. I don't know the words of wisdom of the New Age teachings. Okay, but, that can be acquired. So I will share what I do know. Gazing into the heart of others brings into my being a feeling of welcome. This feels like a fluffy energy that has no barriers. If I were to bring this into form, I would compare it to cotton candy, how it is spun into being and rests upon that little paper stick. Yeah, looking so yummy and fluffy, yet once touched it, it collapses and compresses the form. And that compression of the form is a very important thing. We're going to talk about that because in every universe, before it disappears and before it's in a way reabsorbed into absolute infinity, there is a compression down to the absolute infinitesimal. And it's just, it goes as far as it can go toward being next to nothing. So So yes, thank you for sharing that, and I appreciate your poetry. I appreciate that. Um,
You have a raised hand.
okay, I do. What's it? Under what name? Under what name?
Damien.
Damien. Okay, good. I'll get there now. Okay, Damien. You're self-muted, Damien. So if you can press the microphone, there you go. You're good. Okay.
Hiya, Michael.
Hi.
It's Damien from Ireland. Yeah, I was just thinking that, what comes in when I'm actually listening, I get it. Okay, I understand it. And then when I try to think about it, it's gone. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. It's more like it's not a feeling. It's just a knowing, and even that's the wrong word to express.
Yeah.
And as a student of DK, the same things would happen with his writings. Like one of the first books that I've studied, and I'm still studying, was Esoteric Healing.
Yeah.
And I'd become into a section, and I say, yeah, I understand. And then I tried to think about it, and the understanding is gone. It's like, how do I put, intellectualizing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When I intellectualize, it just goes.
Yeah. Well, work out.
Yeah. Sorry?
Work out your own method, of course, is what works for you. Yeah. Go ahead, Damien. Go ahead.
Yeah, but I was just actually making a comment of, like, you're reading something or you're listening to something, and yeah, I get that, right? And then if I try to think about it and analyze it, it's just gone.
Yeah.
And I end up getting confused.
Well, you know what? My feeling. I really understand. It's such an elusive thing. Sometimes I get really frustrated. I'm there. I've come for a purpose. I want to be in that universal that. It may appear, and then it may disappear. So I just know that what we call time is needed for continuity of presence. And then I think
absolutely,
once you have it, and once continuous, sometimes I wake up in the morning and say, okay, is it here? Okay. But if you have that continuity of presence and really have it, it's going to stay. It's going to stay.
Yeah, and here's the other thing. What I do, I constantly question, did I actually understand that? Did I actually get it? And I have this dialogue going on as I'm reading and listening and whatever, when I get these feelings or whatever. So I constantly question myself. So was I actually in that space?
Yeah. Well,
it's interesting. Yeah.
We're going to have to be tolerant with ourselves, and we're going to know that the great souls have achieved the continuity of this thing or thinglessness that we're looking for, and we know it exists because it has dawned upon us in a flash. Like I said before, they call it the blinking of the dragon's eye. The blinking of the dragon's eye. I think that's such a good. And one day the dragon just opens his eyes and keeps them open, and everything fits into this continuity of being. Hey, Damien, are you from Ireland or?
I am. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Dublin.
Wonderful. I love that accent.
There's a lot of people actually in Ireland that study the Tibetan and are into the triangles. Lucis Trust.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I know it well. I know it well.
Yeah, I know that. Just different groups.
Yeah, fantastic.
But it seems to be rising now.
That's wonderful.
It's really starting to rise because of the time that we're in, actually, as well.
Yeah, we're in very perilous times, but another 5.5 years.
Absolutely.
The Tibetan rites again, around the year 2025. Yeah. So let's do the best we can until that time. Yeah. Okay, well, say hello to all the brothers and sisters there, and
I will indeed.
Encourage their work. That's fantastic. Thank you, Damien.
Okay, bye.
You bet. Okay. Now let's see. It looks like Jeff, are you up again here? Let's see. Wait a second.
Oh, I was just going to mention, and with Damon, I mean, that's a common problem for all of us, and this is why the Master gave us the teaching on the Antakarana.
Mm.
You know, it's a long, slow process, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
There's nothing unusual in this at all, and but there's the remedy.
Right, and you know, when you think about the Antakarana, this thing here, I just want to go into this for a second. The Buddhic permanent atom and the Atmic permanent atom are located on these atomic planes, and they are so high in what they mean that even masters can't reach them. So basically, we have to expect a return flow from a source we cannot reach. You know, in other words, if we cannot delude ourselves by thinking that we're really reaching with our Antakarana the Atmic permanent atom or the Buddhic permanent atom. Monastic, yes, we can do that. But we wait for the return flow along the bridge of light, and then an event occurs at the place where those two meet, our rising occult work and the evoked flow. So yeah, it's going to take a long time, and he does dedicate 100 pages in the rays and the initiations, doesn't he, to the Antakarana work. And that's just the beginning, you know. We're not going to stabilize ourselves in the monad right now. I love those people who are always walking in the front door of Shambhala unannounced. You know, I just, we might get a downflow, but unless you're a 6th degree initiate or a master on the first ray, you're not going in. So we have to be realistic about what comes to us. Now, these are, you know, if I may say, what we're doing here, these are in a way monadic studies, okay? And monad is the very beingness of us. It is what we really are, you know, the essence of things, the central fire. And we can say, well, you just can't do that. It's just too far beyond. But I think we can make some headway. That is my sense of things. So, okay, so we try, you know, every, you know, except for when Tuya and I are traveling, you know, we try to be here on the Tuesday night, you know, and hopefully we will get the solid touch of this formless, pervading presence out of which all things in universe derived, and out of which we as limited beings derived. And it won't just be words, it'll be that flash, it'll be that blinking of the dragon's eye, and dragon's just waking up, you know, and he'll keep his eyes open more and more, and pretty soon we'll live in continuity of being. We'll live that way. So that's my hope for all of us, really. Okay, right, now let's see. Anybody else? And then I'm going to go on to a little something else. It's always difficult to know. I send you little things, you know. I send my progress in these seed thoughts in case something grabs you. And I send you some very simple ideas. They're hard to achieve, but I send them. And, you know, and I can't say that I do it every day, but I try most every day to send something out. And, you know, it's a slow process, and I imagine this process that we're involved in right now is going to be taking years. And I hope to, God willing, carry it as far as 2025, because we need that kind of time. And we need that kind of time to study cosmic fire too, and all the detail of the Tibetans' teaching, as if we were really intent on assimilation. He's got these wonderful books. Let's really get them into us and treat that matter as if it was really important, and treat the understanding as if it was really important, because it's going to be hard to find things that are more important than that, especially since we can really help the world, the men and women of goodwill, the new group of world servers. We can help them be even more effective, which means that the outer plane corresponds more to the divine plan, and we really need that now, that's for sure. Okay, friends. So, right, I'm just going to go a little more. I don't want to overdo it. I wrote a letter to you, and I have. This is a letter I didn't complete by any means last time, and I just said a few things, and maybe on the basis of your experience, you'll be able to relate to this. I'm saying that all perceptions are essentially identical, but the word is essentially. They look different, you know what I mean? If I'm looking at a lamp or a computer, they look different, but essentially they are the same and identical. Okay, so we talked about that last time. And all perceptions, this is the math on this one is a little crazy. All perceptions are the same, the identical magnitude or size. And I have a little, absolute infinity with a line through it, which means the smallest thing that can possibly be, and it's a process, and it's not a definite size. So the absolute infinitesimal is what I call an ever-lessening. And finally it just disappears and has no magnitude, no size whatsoever. The ever-lessening disappears. I'm just reviewing what we talked about last time. And you say, well, why get into math? And, I'm no good in math and blah, blah, blah. But there is a kind of mathematics. I remember long ago there was this wonderful book of photographs called The Family of Man. And it was probably published in the 1950s. And it showed photographs from all over the world, all different cultures, and you really got the feeling of humanity, So here's this Buddhist monk. He's pondering, and it says, to the wise person realizes there is no large and there is no small. So, the whole idea that big things and little things are all the same size seems preposterous until you start collapsing our perceptions and comparing them to that part of God that is all divided up, and I call it absolute infinitude. And you compare any size to absolute infinitude, and you're going to get that absolute infinitesimal. And an infinitesimal, of course, the opposite of the great infinity, which just keeps going and going. Let's just say when Galileo backed off from one of his thought experiments and said, God cannot be understood, he was really hit by something, that it was around the question of infinity, and we try to understand what God is, but And in a way, what that means is that we cannot be understood, what we really are. And when the universe disappears again, as it has forever, we'll understand a lot more, because we'll find ourselves, excuse me, that we are that absolute deity. There's just nothing else, and we are that. But the absolute is still more. And sometimes I'll get into that mystery. Okay, and then I also dealt with this. When you detect that otherness, now that's what we tried to do in our meditation. We were very still and we concentrated on the heart. And when you detect that otherness, which not only unites all things, but is all things, that otherness is you as blank, which means absoluteness, okay? That's what that otherness is, that creeping thing that comes in suddenly and then goes away and comes back, and whatever it is, that's you. The seeker and the sought are one. I showed you those 7 mantrams in which naught is but me are found, and I suggest studying them because they're so wonderful for people approaching on the different rays. So this is as far as we got, and I'm going to keep on. I've got lots of words that I want to, oh golly, I want to unfold. I want to unfold, if I possibly can. And they come in here on the Master Sea Thought list, and I'll be working on these a long time. So this, you're sharing in the writing of this book, and hopefully it's over here. And these are all ideas which I plan to elaborate. I've already done a little bit about absoluteness and the absolute and infinity and so forth, but there's space and time and being and self and identity. I've done something on that. Consciousness and perception. Mathematics I haven't begun yet. And you'll find that it's interesting. It's not as forbidding as you might think. And change and motion and reality in different forms. Actually, I should really put down here reality. And in infinitesimal and negligibility, I call the ultimate infinitesimal the ultimate negligibility. And then the concept of zero. Big zero exists, little zero doesn't. And then the different types of perception, and how all superimposition is a big one. How all experience is really superimposed upon each other. And then the whole idea of the point. What is a real point? What is a true point? And is the whole universe a point? And then the no thing, and is there sequence or not sequence? You can't even get from here to there. There's no way. Aristotle had it right. He said that infinity is untraversable. There's no way you can have arrived in a linear fashion in the place that we are right now. And that's a huge mystery. Then the whole idea of dimensions and dimensionality, and the idea of linearity or simultaneity. I know these look like big words and all that, but they are interesting subjects, and they're not just some kind of abstract study. What they are is the dynamics of you, of us, of beings. These things relate to the dynamics of beings, of human beings, and other far greater beings. So this is my plan, and I keep on adding to this, and to make different documents centered around each one of these, because I have a lot of seed thoughts and they are centered around these different subjects. So, hang on and we'll get into these things if you're interested. Let's see where we are now. I'm going to save that. Okay. Now going back. So the next thing, just a couple more maybe. I don't want to overdo it here, because we have all the time in the world, forever. You know what's so amazing? You think about it. We're used to thinking of things that start and end. This was the beginning of the universe. This is the end. This is the end of the universe, or a universe. But the mind just kind of goes crazy when you think about something that never started. It always was, and will never end. It always will be. It's very hard to think of something that never started and was always there. And you just can't cross that. I don't know if Aristotle solved that problem. He was on the third ray, and Plato was on the second ray, we're told. Plato had a lot of the 2 and the 4, and Aristotle the 3 and the 6 and the 5. Aristotle had a lot of devotion. That's amazing. He certainly believed in God, or the gods or whatever. There's a story about Aristotle. Plato, like a good second ray, was going on and on and on and on and on in one of his lectures. And gradually, the students just melted away from the lecture hall, or maybe it was outside, I don't know. Pretty soon, only Aristotle remained, listening to the master, Plato. And he listened till the bitter end. So this shows the devotion and the sixth ray that was there for him. Truly, so much of Western mentality is dependent upon Aristotle and metaphysics. Well, he had his own metaphysics too. He was not a godless man by any means, but Plato had something on the second ray which was still different and more musical, and rays 2 and 4 and that kind of thing. And who was Socrates after all? That has to be determined. Okay, so in other words, you are, well, I know I'm using some coined words here. In other words, you are the essential otherness, that thing that suddenly happens, that just eats up form. You are that essential otherness which, and I use this word samify, make same, samifies all perceptions. Everybody, before they get into these things, they look around and the world is made of completely different everything, One thing, here's a boundary, here's a boundary, what happened to the boundless, immutable principle? So if you can samify all your perceptions, you're heading for a realization of the boundless, immutable principle. And we practiced a little bit of this. Therefore, attempt, this is like instruction, attempt to pervade not only the space you seem to see between things, like empty space is just an illusion anyway, but pervade the things perceived as well. Fill, this is like an injunction. You take it into your contemplation and say, how do I do this? You have to find your own method. Fill space completely and use your imagination to do this. I practice this a lot. I succeed sometimes. Other times, no. Fill space completely. I might be on Pluto. I'm there. I'm it. I might be on the Andromeda Galaxy. 250 billion stars. I'm no less there and no less it than when I'm looking in the mirror. I mean, people will think you're crazy for thinking such things, but okay, these are just the logical outcome of the kinds of things we have been taught by the great sages. Your growing ability to infusive yourself as identical with all perceptions. Remember, whatever you see, if you can see it, you are it. See it, be it, Anything, even the concrete, even the asphalt, even whatever. Identification is an amazing thing, and form makes no difference. Your growing ability to infusive yourself as identical with all perceptions will, contrary to what you might think, render your perception of distinctions more acute and not less. Now, I think Jeff was warning about what can happen, when people just kind of get into this oneness thing and they float off and they become completely impractical in the world and so heavenly high they're of no earthly use, But I say something different, that if you find that there's something in your heart that is identical with that something in everything else, then you're going to be even more accurate in how you perceive and analyze the parts and pieces. Now, maybe that seems like a contradiction, because a lot of people will say, hey, look, I see the whole, so I don't need the parts. No, the parts are forever. How long have we been doing Mahamaya? Forever. Forever. And forever. I love big numbers, I teach my grandson big numbers. I've got a few good new ones for him now. You can go back a Googleplexian universes ago on the Great Breath, and it's still infinitely preceded. And that's the crazy thing about infinity, it always precedes itself by infinity, if it's beginningless. So if I were saying you've been around a long time, it wouldn't be accurate. If I was saying you've been around forever, that would be accurate. Okay. Now, practically speaking, activate the bottom of the heart. And as Malcolm was saying the other day from the Upanishads, was it, or the spirit Purusha is in the heart, and it's about an inch tall. I mean, those are concrete ways of describing it. But there is a depth in your heart. See, never leave the heart out of it. Never. Because if you leave the heart out of it, you won't infusive. You won't be able to get the wholeness. So I call it the bottom of the heart, and sometimes we say to someone, I love you from the bottom of my heart. Well, it's a meaningful statement. So try to find what is this bottom of your heart, and then activate it, however you would do it, even with imagination. And you'll find yourself infusiving. I remember once I had a vision of the masters, and they were like a Wesak festival, and they were all lined up there, and I could identify the faces and all that. And I said, oh my goodness, they're the same being. They're the same being. It's not Master M, Master KH, Master Venetian. Yeah, it is that, but they're the same being. And I was really struck struck by that. And we want to do that. And not only people, but anything, same. And one of my friends said, well, it's not very inspiring, because usually it means this static and it's not going anywhere, and we're not, it's frozen, it's not exciting. But I look at it completely different from that, because I always consider that sameness and variety go hand in hand, and they are simultaneously together, unless, of course, the whole universe disappears and the absolute deity disappears and all you're left is the absolute. Then it's just sameness. So find the bottom of your heart, or that point in your heart that attacks the form of any perception and renders it the same. It does exist. Okay. So continue then to perceive distinction while infusing the identicality of apparent distinctions. So you got to do both things at the same time. It doesn't mean that suddenly I'm looking at something. I've got two little books here filled with more seed thoughts. God help us. Now, if I suddenly infusive in relation to those two books, it doesn't mean the books disappear from my perception. They're still there. But I am perceiving distinction, even while I know that essential reality is operative. So I'm perceiving through infuception this, what do I want to call it? This other thing, this other no thing. I'm feeling it in my heart, even while I perceive it. And pretty soon I want to eat up all variety around me through the factor of infuception, the good, the bad, the beautiful, the ugly. It doesn't make any difference. Form makes no difference in this particular approach. Later you get back into, well, what should we call it? I had the word for it before. Relationship. And then form makes a huge difference. Okay, a little more. And then I'll ask you if you want to say anything. In the universe, remember, you're not always in a universe. Universe disappears. All levels of it disappear. And only, the absolute deity exists and absoluteness. In universe, you can reduce all things to one, which will be an accurate universal infuception. Later, and forever, will reappear the absolute zero, the maximal state of which is utter beingness. Well, we're talking about re-becoming the absolute which we always are. Madame Blavatsky begins the secret doctrine basically with the absolute, the eternal parent, who has slumbered for 7 eternities and so forth, and time was not, and space was not, and everything was not. That's true. And that's where we are. The no thing. But the no thing is not nothing. Okay? So let's at least get that straight. The no thing is not nothing. It is not negation. So when the universe disappears, as it ever has, you'll be back in, well, whatever you are at that point. You'll be the complete universal logos by that point. you'll just be reabsorbed into the absolute deity as ever. And finally, I'm just saying here that as time allows in this relative world, I will continue with examining identicality, the identical, the same, because we don't need any convincing when it comes to difference. We look around us and everything's different. This from that and this from that. Where we need the convincing and where we need to see things is the sameness. It's much more subtle. And we're not practiced in doing that. And only the heart will help us do that. Okay, look, so I ran through these things. And and whether or not I should have done that's a good question. But is there anything anybody would like to ask or say or add or subtract? Or, of course, you know, you can't add or subtract or multiply absolute infinity. It's always going to be absolute infinity. So is there anything that anybody would like to comment on? Any idea that came to you as we're talking about this? And Joe, you can help me because some of those question marks are old, and I've dealt with what they had to say.
I think you've dealt with all the questions, and I see no hands.
Okay.
Michael, remind about the new Group of World Servers Week.
Yes, dear. I was just going to say, okay, but now another voice of God has spoken. And, you know, it's a really important thing to get the people that can help being as strong as they can be. You know, it's called strengthening the hands of the new group of world servers. And always in the arcane school, that was the very last question. Have you noticed any new group of world servers, and how can we strengthen their hands? Okay. So here in Finland, from the 21st to the 29th or 28th, somewhere in there, we're going to have the celebration of the festival week of the new group of world servers in our Temple of Silence. And who knows, maybe we don't know yet, but maybe we'll get up north of the Arctic Circle if some people want to brave Finland in the winter above the Arctic Circle. It's kind of fun. And we will study the new group of world servers. We will meditate upon them, and we will have ritual work considering the Deva Kingdom and other ways of helping to strengthen the hands of new group of world servers and men and women of goodwill. So meditation, study, and ritual, and Christmas and in the Finnish style, and anything else to you that I'm forgetting. You just got to let us know if you might be interested in coming here. We're going to be broadcasting all that as well. If I can figure out the electronics on that, whatever we've got, whether it's a webinar or whether it's a broadcast, we try to make that available to you, give you a link so you can participate at a distance. But it's kind of, you know, fun to be together every 7 years.
Yes, Michael, what is important to realize that this is the last new Group of World Servers festival before 25.
Yeah.
So it is extremely important.
Yeah, that's true. And then
also what we should remember that Peter is pointing out that one of the most important work for the new Group of World Servers is to invoke the soul. So we all should maybe form little triangles and work for the invoking the soul of our nations, and of course the souls of these three important countries: United States, Great Britain, and Russia.
Yeah.
because upon their hands lies the destiny of whole humanity. And we all see how crucial time in all of those countries we are living.
Indeed.
Maybe Russia is behind the scenes, but if you think about this situation in Ukraine,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so forth, we see so many things happening via those countries, and which are questioning the whole unity in global relationships. So that's why I think if there is any possibility to come together, and of course it is the time of Christmas. In our family life, it may be challenging, but then to be together in the webinars and trying to vision the future for humanity. Because if you remember, the Nuclear World Service is the Ashna Center of Sanat Kumara, and one of the again purposes of this group. DK is mentioning how the Nuclear World Service is meant to vision the future for humanity. That's why we are living very important times in this group, and remember its responsibilities.
Right, exactly. So, you know, this is the curriculum of relativity. And but as Jeff earlier said, according to our relationship with being, so we will be effective in the relative world. So this is, and there are quite a number of groups in different countries that are gathering in person as well. I know of several, you know, that are doing this, and I'm sure I don't know about them all whatsoever. So let's just use this as a real point of inspiration. And as I say, if you can't make it in person, and we hope that some of you can, there will be the webinars and broadcasts that you'll be able to tune in on, and maybe other groups too will be offering webinars and broadcasts. So there'll be plenty to keep us inspired, and we have to use it as a kind of a high point. There's a terrific new moon occurring at that time, not a full moon this time, but a new moon right in the middle of the days, and Christmas, of course, you know. Okay, that's great, and thank you, Tuya, for emphasizing that. Now, I think I'm going to do two things. One is ask you if there are any questions or thoughts, and the second thing is have a very short alignment followed by the great invocation. So the first thing is to ask you if you would like to say anything or ask anything. And, you know, once you get used to the language, you'll be fine. But right now I can understand it's a little strange. So am I looking at anybody there? Maybe not. Maybe not. And okay, Katja. Okay. Now you're self-muted, Katja. You're self-muted. There you go.
Yes. I just want to say thank you, Michael, because for expanding unexpandable. It's just the frame, you know, all of a sudden the framework has shifted, and I mean, immense gratitude for that.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we're so focused at the moment on some external events and trying to bring things working together. Yet, you know, it's just all of a sudden, you know, when it comes to this moments of serious intent and intensive, you know, commitments and things like that, all of a sudden, there's just some calm comes over me, and it says, it's not a voice really, but this realization that, well, it's all good. and it's all good, not on the sense of moral support, but in the sense of realization that, you know, the greatness around us and surrounding us and within us and us is so different from what we experience, you know, at the moment, from moment to moment, and just to connect those two, isolated unity, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a, I don't know, such a privilege to share it with everybody. Thank you. So thank you very much for this work and for being.
Thank you, Katya. You know, sounds like the soul. You know, so I mean, those things sound like higher perception. So we're very grateful. And by the way, the work that Katya and Alexander are doing with the 2025 group, you know, geez, the exact name, but anyway, it's 2025 initiative.
It is the 2025 initiative. Yes.
Initiative. I got it. Yeah, I got it at the last minute. And also the work that they're doing in helping to coordinate various groups in Russia, Ukraine, South America, the English-speaking people. I mean, all over the world, so that we get the most out of this new group of world servers festival, and that we give the most. So we want to thank you and Sasha Alexander for that very, very important work, and your co-workers too, of course.
Yes, coordination group, you know.
With you.
Yes, seven people working together to make it possible.
That sounds like a good number.
Good number. We would appreciate 9, but 7 is as good.
And Masamori says 12 gives you the invincible dodecahedron. So name your number, you know.
Okay, 12 it is then.
Thank you. Okay, any other statements or questions before we kind of maybe I should have just stopped at each number, you know, but I just had this kind of desire to drive through it. Well, you know, fill space with yourself and activate your heart and realize that difference is sameness and sameness is difference. And, you know, it's very confusing, what would you call it, kind of paradoxical stuff here. But sometimes I call the one great reality the great paradox, because it has to be finite in order to be infinite. So we can talk about that sometime too, and maybe a little later we will. It's great to work with you all, and let's just have a just tuning in for a moment. You know, if you're going to infusive, infuception, you know, not just perceive this or that, but if you're going to touch or evoke or have appear this kind of presence that is felt in the heart and it has no form, and is everywhere and nowhere, really. I just let my imagination go wherever it wants to, and I capture every form in infuception. It's like a hunting. It's like a hunt. I capture whatever I see. And if I'm lucky, I'll realize that whatever I capture is just as much me as I am myself. So practice makes perfect, and you can give 5 minutes a day to cultivating infuception. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Thanks, friends, for being here. Tomorrow night, it's much more detailed along the line of cosmic fire and meticulous entirety. And I think what I have to do, I think, Joe, do they have the link for tomorrow night? Do you know?
You've sent it out. We've sent it out on Constant Contact. If they haven't received the Constant Contact message, I would like for people to contact me directly so I can figure out what's going awry. You have sent the link out. I have sent the link out. We can follow up with anyone who doesn't have it.
And I'll tell you what I'm going to do too is, on YouTube, they have a page there where it talks about what kind of program is coming up. Like we're going to do triangles tomorrow, It's the morning schedule. And I found a place on the YouTube page where I could actually list the link, or you might have to double click from that point. And if you don't have it in any other way, you'll have it there. And I do believe it is there even right now. If you, went as if you were going to listen to a broadcast, and you'll find the webinar link, there. So between Joe and myself, we'll try to make sure that you have what you need. And Joe, what address do you want them to write you at? Is it
walz.jg@gmail.com? And Jeff has his hand up also.
okay? And can you put
I'll put it in the chat box.
Put it in the chat box, and yeah, Jeff, go ahead, please.
Yeah, which particular aspect of cosmic fire are you looking into here, Michael?
The whole book.
Are you going to start at the beginning?
We already did. Yeah.
Oh, have you? Okay.
Yeah, last time, and if you want the copy of that video, it basically is just the introduction, you know. And we're not with the stanzas of Xian. We're going to hold off on them until later, because in a way the whole book is the interpretation of these stanzas. So I think we'll do a lot better once we get into the book and then interpret the stanzas of Xian. Anyway, be most welcome. You know, you have a lot of knowledge about these things, and you've been in it a long time. Okay.
Michael, just so you're assured, there are 70 people already registered for that Cosmic Fire in-depth webinar tomorrow.
Okay, well, that's good. And then write Joe here, waltz.jg@gmail.com, if you want to get on the CC list, Constant Contact, and be informed of these links and so forth. Okay? All right, friends. Until tomorrow morning, at least here in Finland, and whether Tuya does it or I do it, I don't know. We'll see. But just show up and we'll be there too. Okay, lots of love, many blessings, and I guess that's it for the moment. Bye-bye.